fan, because this is the most important thing. I think a lot of your insight, since you're in the region, you can give us a little yes or no as to what's going on. I thought that David Sachs had one of the best ones out there. He listed his sources, but he put up 4 reasons. What's the significance of Bakhmut, right? And that's the most important thing, because a lot of people were saying, it's just one war, it's one place. Can't they fight somewhere else? Well, let's take a look at these
I mean,
reasons.
they will, but
I mean, of course they will, but this Bakhmut, which is now called what, fam?
Artyomosk.
God bless you, is now under the hands of Russia. Here's what the mainstream media should be telling you about Bakhmut, but they're not. Number 1, this is regional transport and a logistics hub. Bakhmut gives Russia access to key roads and rail. It places larger cities of Kramatorsk and Sloveniansk.
Kramatorsk and
How do you say it?
Slavyansk.
Thank you. Within easy
Kramatorsk and
range of
Slavyansk.
Russian artillery. Hence, Zelensky's earlier comment that the loss of Bakhmut would give the Russians an open road to the rest of Donetsk. Unique defensive fortifications, fam. Bakhmut's network of subterranean salt mines and tunnels, which are 100 miles plus, contributed to its defensibility. It also provided an underground complex to stockpile weapons, munitions, and equipment. Ukraine has other lines of defense, but Bakhmut may have been unique. The third one, Fortress Bakhmut. Bakhmut became a rallying cry for the Ukrainian resistance. Zelensky called it the fortress of morale, fam, and gave a Bakhmut flag to Congress. How do you feel if that's hanging on your wall there, Nancy Pelosi? Yeah, Bakhmut now belongs to Russia. Nice flag. The fight for Bakhmut will change the trajectory of our war for independence and freedom, he said. And the fourth one is Operation Meat Grinder. Russia may have used Bakhmut as a trap to lure in Ukrainian troops and generals, causing them massive casualties and imperiling them, the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Prigozhin videos claim the Russians were running out of ammo, which were eagerly reported by mainstream media. It may have been part of a trap. And then he lists all his sources down below: Reuters, BBC, and Kathleen Tyson. Fam, what are your thoughts about what David Sachs put up over here? Is that pretty accurate?
Everything we have said before on Bakhmut, it's a key city that is really important in terms of logistics, in terms of military transport, in terms of the transport of personnel. Everything he listed there in regards to that is absolutely true. I mean, that's why it was so important. And that's why the West initially talked about how vital and key winning this for was for Ukraine. So that's why they've shifted now to it's not important, but it is important. It's important logistically, militarily. And then the last one too, I was going to expand later on in this RT article as well, where the Operation Meat Grinder, the whole point was to basically exhaust Ukrainians' forces by making them focus only on Bakhmut, having the majority of their defense go to Bakhmut, while Russia is able to also go elsewhere. And also mentioning the fact that Prigozhin saying that he was running out of munitions might have been a trap. I do agree. We were talking about that before, if you guys recall, that it might have been a trap. He seemed to be, exaggerating this and that. And immediately after, he said he got the munitions he wanted. And then so on and so forth. The rest is history. They continued. Now everything's going to move west. They're going to encounter Slavyansk. And eventually, they're going to get to these outer regions. But Bakhmut is basically the key to that. The tunnels, as he mentioned, would provide great defense. And now that all belongs to Russia. And so that is going to give Russia the advantage of having this central area relative to now the West, where they will continue advancing. So it is really important. It is really essential. It is a turning point. And as far as morale goes, Ukraine might be doing all sorts of PR to pretending that this isn't important, that this isn't a big deal. They are putting out video after video saying, oh, we have, the southernmost western part of Bakhmut. We're still there. So they keep doing this whole spin with the help of Western media. And it's just not the case. I mean, this is clearly now Russia. If anything, Russia took too long by some accounts to capture Bakhmut. They could have captured it much sooner. They could have, in the sense of if they had used more of their military. Because remember, as we've discussed on the show before, Russia has not used the vast majority of their army. Like they've only used a very small percentage of it. They also have refused to destroy cities. If you look at Mariupol, which is being rebuilt right now, there are people that are living there that are going to, the ocean. They're enjoying summer. It's not a destroyed city. If you look at the parts of Ukraine that are, that's what they didn't want to happen to these regions. And so that is one reason they say that this is why they took a while. But it wasn't going to be a easy fight. I think both Russia and Ukraine learned early on that this was going to take some time, that this wasn't going to be we're going to come in and we're going to capture on either end, right? And we're just going to take this city and this fortress and go. And it wasn't like that for Russia. And I think also they may have predicted that they could have taken this sooner, but it took a little bit longer. But it's like 7 months in since they started the offensive.
It's almost like in the beginning when I think a lot of times and people were like, "Oh, they couldn't take Kiev. They went into Kiev, but they couldn't take it." I'm like, no, I think they did some early threatening of Kiev, so therefore a lot of the Ukrainian troops had to stay in Kiev. They couldn't go fight elsewhere. So the Russians will pull moves like this. I think they've displayed it before, so you never know what they're up to as far as if it was a trap or if it wasn't a trap. But I had a hard time believing that they were running low on ammunition. Fam, what do we got here?
Okay, so another thing that Ukraine is really not wanting people to talk about is their commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Valery Zaluzhny, who has appeared on Ukrainian television looking quite not as good as he did. So the picture on the right is what he looked like before in the beginning, and then this is what he looked like recently. So he seems to have aged. He seems there are reports that he is in the hospital right now, going through some sort of. He's going to go through some sort of operation, and he was injured in Dnepropetrovsk. So it seems like their commander-in-chief is down. They lost Bakhmut / Artyomosk. That's the name. Russians gave to the region, and now it's going to be back to that, which will be a lot harder for everyone to say, but you'll get it eventually. It took me a minute as well, so don't feel bad.
So this is a great one right here too, fam. I don't know if you saw this from Wyatt. This is awesome. I'll click on them. I'll let you go over them. Good.
Right. So this is what I was talking about, the shift in the media spin. So on October 20th, 2022, CNN pretty much said about Bakhmut, the significance of the city cannot be overstressed. And they specifically tell you themselves, right? Bakhmut lies at the fork that points towards two other strategic towns in the Donetsk region, Konstantinivka to the southwest and Kramatorsk and Sloviansk to the northwest. It seems to me they're going to be going towards Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, especially Sloviansk. And all three are key to Putin's total control of the region. Notice how they frame that. But they did admit that this was a key city. The next one, while Bakhmut, and this is in March of 2023, while Bakhmut's strategic importance should not be overstated, its capture could still carry a very welcome symbolic impact for Russian President Vladimir Putin. So they shifted to symbolic, right? So when Russian troops took the town of Soledar in mid-January, it marked a first gain in the Donbass for months. 6 weeks on, the capture of Bakhmut would represent the completion of the next step. So, okay. Then it's like the city sits towards the northeast of the Donetsk. This is March 26th as well, of the region, about 13 miles from the Luhansk region, and has been a target of Russian forces. Since last summer, the city has been the stone's throw from the front lines. So its capture would represent a long sought-after success for Moscow's forces and bring some limited strategic value. Limited strategic value, but still strategic value. May 20th, 2023. If confirmed, Russia's Bakhmut capture would mark the country's first gain in months, but the city's symbolism always outweighed its strategic importance. Russian forces, bolstered by members of the Wagner mercenary group, have taken heavy losses trying to capture the city. So notice how they spin it. They literally pretty much outright, in the end, start saying the complete opposite of what they said in the beginning. The complete and total opposite. So you have them contradicting themselves literally in an effort to create this narrative that everything's still fine with Ukraine, when more and more people are seeing that that's not the case. Even people that, haven't been paying attention are seeing that this is just a lost cause for Ukraine at this point, and they're seeing the media spin on it, because it's a joke at this point. Is it important? Is it not important? Are Russians losing, or are they so terrible that they're trying to take over the entire world? Like, which is it? They can't stick to a single. They keep contradicting themselves and can't stick to one track, because they go wherever is needed to make this narrative creation that Ukraine is still a successful, operation, and that Ukraine will win. And that's just complete and total BS.
Fam, let's get to the next part of this over here. I think you'll like this. This is the Wagner Group on the ground. Let's take a look. This here.
Сегодня пополудни в 12 часов полностью был взят Бахмут. Последний участок так называемой многоэтажки самолета. Я хочу сказать спасибо российскому народу, который нас поддерживает. Спасибо тем погибшим парням, которые погибли на этой войне. И военные, и наши бойцы ЧВК «Вагнер». Спасибо тем, кто сейчас с нами в строю. Те, кто не сумел продолжить контракт, и те, кто придут и будут воевать вместе с нами в будущем. Спасибо генералу Суровикину и генералу Мезенцеву, которые дали нам возможность провести эту тяжелую операцию. И спасибо Владимиру Владимировичу Путину, что дал нам эту возможность и высокую честь защищать свою родину.
So, clearly a very important battle for the Russians in this whole entire operation, in this whole entire conflict. Again, it's still going to continue, though. They're going to continue on west. And again, another thing that was reiterated was that there wasn't going to be any sort of negotiation. Oh, and I forgot to put that in there from Lula. There wasn't going to be any sort of negotiation with Ukraine as long as they continue receiving weapons from the West, as long as they continue attacking civilians. And Russia says that there's not going to be any sort of negotiation. And Lula most recently said that that the way that Zelensky wants a sort of peace deal, he said, is basically means a surrender from Russia, and that's just not feasible. Yeah. So Lula came out and said that, and that is entirely true. That's exactly what we've been saying all along. It's just complete fantasy to think that Russia's just going to surrender when they have the upper hand right now.
Here's what Ritter says Russia will be doing in the near future.
Well, I don't believe there's going to be a lull in the fighting. The capture of Bakhmut is a tremendous victory for Russia, for Wagner. And it's up to Russia now to exploit this success. The Ukrainians have accumulated forces sufficient for a concerted counterattack, but that counterattack is doomed to fail. I believe it's up to Russia to keep the pressure up. A lull would be in the best interest of Ukraine, but only Russia can dictate the course of action. They've won a great victory. Hopefully they'll recognize that they need to continue to put the pressure on Ukraine throughout this summer. Well, I don't believe there's going to be a lull in the fighting.
Yeah, I do think that what he's talking about maybe is because Yevgeny Prigozhin, the chief of Wagner, said that they are going to rest. And so basically what he said did happen as far as like the transfer of Bakhmut to the Russian troops. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be any sort of continued counteroffensive. I think you are going to see Russia take advantage of this and continue fighting. I don't see them letting up in any way, shape, or form. But I do think maybe Wagner might focus on other cities now that they don't need to be there anymore. So that's I believe that's an accurate assessment as well from Scott.
Well, there's a big issue, fam, is that Zelensky won't admit that the Russians are. Zelensky is now claiming that what you see with your own eyes is not real, and Russia does not control the strategic city of Bakhmut. But also, his military leaders are admitting that Ukraine only controls a couple of buildings in Bakhmut.
Now our people are accomplishing a very important mission. They are now in Bakhmut. I will not share where exactly, but it witnesses that Bakhmut is not occupied by Russian Federation as of today. There are no 2 or 3 interpretations of those words.
Не відповідає дійсності. Наші підрозділи утримують ряд будівель і мають ряд фортифікаційних там споруд на південно-західній частині міста. І не дивлячись на всі їхні такі голосні заяви, ми тихо, але дуже ефективно робимо свою роботу. Плюс все те, що зробили герої Бахмуту для знищення цього групування, потім сторицею віддасться, коли наші підрозділи, які готувалися за кордоном і в Україні, набудуть бойових спроможностей і виконують цього здеморалізованого і з вибитим бойовим потенціалом ворога за межі нашої країни. У нас завжди була можливість доставляти туди все необхідне, навіть найкритичніші дні, прокладати додаткові шляхи сполучення і забирати звідти поранених. Така ситуація залишається і зараз. Відхід з міста чи його оборона, це буде вирішуватися тільки з врахуванням доцільності і збереження своїх сил і засобів. Можливі різні варіанти, але це тільки на розгляд командування, яке за всю більше ніж рік війни показало, що
Zelensky used his visit to Hiroshima, which was obliterated by a World War II atomic bomb, to draw comparisons to the devastated city of Bakhmut. There is absolutely nothing left alive. All the buildings are destroyed, he said. It is simply absolute, total destruction. Zelensky was quick to deny Kremlin claims that Bakhmut had been taken by its forces, but peering through the dense fog of war makes it hard to determine if the fighting in one of the longest and bloodiest battles in this conflict really has come to an end. Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group staked their claim to the city, and the leader of the paramilitary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, posted this video.
Бахмутская мясорубка.
Okay, so fam, I don't know if you saw how they contradict themselves and each other, because Zelensky's like, nothing is left, nothing remains. But also, we have some buildings, right?
We have control of the city,
we have control of some buildings, but there's nothing left. And comparing it to Hiroshima, he got so much pushback for that, because who bombed Hiroshima? And like, it's just he's clueless to make that comparison. And those were nuclear bombs, first of all. So it's just he shouldn't open his mouth. But yeah, that was really bad comparison.
Here's a good video of him denying it. Video of Zelensky saying that Bakhmut has fallen into Russian hands.
Mr. President, Zelensky, is Bakhmut still in Ukraine's hands? The Russians say they've taken Bakhmut.
I think no.
Mr. President, Zelensky, is Bakhmut still in Ukraine's hands? The Russians say they've taken Bakhmut.
I think no.
Mr. President, Zelensky, is Bakhmut still in Ukraine's hands?
Does he mean no?
I think no. I think no. I think no.
I need it as a soundbite. I need it desperately as a soundbite. I think
I
no.
think no.
I
I
think
think no.
fam.
I can't. So one of the things that happens every time Russia comes through is that you get a slew of people who were kept there. It happened with Solidar. It's happening now with Bakhmut or Artyomosk, where people talk about their experiences with what happened and during the time of the Ukrainian occupation, because that's what to a lot of people it was, because they couldn't speak their own language, they were used for whatever mechanisms. There was a lot of abuse. We've seen the images all over the internet. So this one refugee spoke to RIA Novosti and told the reporter about their experience. And the translation isn't exactly the best, but basically, I can read it out loud as it's going. So they didn't want to evacuate to the Ukrainian controlled zone, who didn't consider them to be children, or their children or get human. Hold on, it's going a little fast for me to read it, Tim. If you rewind it a little bit. So they didn't want to evacuate, right? The Ukrainian controlled zone, because the Ukrainian army didn't consider them human, didn't consider their children human. So they didn't want to evacuate. But the Ukrainian army had let out a decree that said if they didn't evacuate, they would take their children away. And if they didn't show up to the specified city, they would never see their children, and their children would be taken. So that's what she's explaining. And she said she's there saying that's why the child would have been taken away. And we can press play. So the Ukrainian army arrived with this decree that was issued in Ukraine, stating that they had every right to take the child away from the parents, even without the parents or relatives accompanying the child. And if the parents did not agree, they would take the child away and deprive them of their parental rights. And there was no certainty. You can let it play. If you didn't go with the child, there was no certainty, maybe even if they went with the child, that they wouldn't have taken the kids away from their parents. So even they would have even snatched the kid from their parents. And so they were insulting them, basically. And they would tell them, you have 5 minutes to get ready, get up and leave, take your documents. And they were trying to basically run away with their children before they were taken away. And she said she didn't have time to go to her phone or get anything. And they were shown this decree, and he just showed it in front and had said that they had 5 minutes to get ready. I'm taking the child. If you're going, then if you're going, you don't go, you have a day to come. Basically, if they didn't go with them, they would lose their parental rights and not see their child. So again, that's what they accuse the Ukrainian army of doing, which I wanted to mention because one of the things that was mentioned all the time here was that, if you guys recall, they accused Vladimir Putin of taking children away from the people in the Donbass, right? And what was actually happening is that they were evacuating these children from the areas that were in danger of being hit. So that's one of the reasons why the ICC put an arrest warrant out on Putin, but they accused him of international war crimes. So this is exactly what we're talking about here, is the fact that these kids were being manipulated and used against their own will and their parents' own will to put these civilians in harm's way to go to the Ukrainian controlled centers where they could be controlled when they wanted to go elsewhere and leave elsewhere. So that's something that I think is important to point out, especially with the fact that all of this is being accused on Putin and on Russians, when if you actually go to these places in Donbass, the stories you hear are quite the opposite. So she's saying how there was shelling that began, and they grabbed the child as their parents were trying to leave. They dragged him into a car. A female neighbor came as she heard them screaming, and they told her that she should not interfere, otherwise she would be put down. And they told her to go screw herself, took the child and left. And they said to tell the parents that unless they arrived to Konstantinovka within a day, they would not see their child. Were they AFU servicemen? Yes. So just a testimony I thought was important to hear. And I think we kind of went over most of this already, but if you would like to, if you would like to read this article, I highly recommend it. It goes over the entire conflict, basically from the beginning to the end. Fam, if you scroll down to the very end, there's a couple of things I wanted to read. Just the very end. Ooh, I'm not going to be able to read that here. I'll pull it up here. Okay, let's see.
Fam, I got it nice and big for you.
Fam?
Right there, look.
Okay, so this, let's see if that's it, because I don't know if that's it. Okay, conclusions. If you go up a little bit more, just a couple. There you go. So this is what Prigozhin said, and I just wanted to reiterate the importance of the Battle of Artyomosk. Again, it allowed Russia to grind down the Ukrainian reserves, forcing Kiev to focus on Artyomosk and to disrupt Ukrainians' offensive in other parts of the front, especially in the direction of Melitopol. And he said on October 8th, 2022, together with Army General Sergei Surovkin, it was decided to launch Operation Bakhmut Meat Grinder, an assault on the village of Bakhmut in order to provoke Vladimir Zelensky to throw in as many forces as possible to hold Bakhmut. In Bakhmut, we grinded the Ukrainian forces, hence the name Bakhmut Meat Grinder. And then he said, in any case, the more than 9-month-long battle for Artyomosk permanently changed the perception of the conflict, forcing both Ukraine and Russia to abandon any ideas of a fast-paced campaign or deep breakthroughs. Exactly. And only this only took place 30 kilometers deep into the front lines. So again, this is that was how it was. And now, of course, it's up to the Russian army whether they're going to advance when. We don't know exactly, likely soon, but it's going to, of course, happen west towards Slavyansk and also along the lines of Kryvyi Torets. And the Ukrainian positions in Severodonetsk also need to be dealt with in the northern flank. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a key hold, but they also mention how there's still forces that remain in the west of Artyomosk that are need to be dealt with by Russia, and these Ukrainian forces prevent Russia from having this needed stability along this important Donbass canal. So that's kind of what you're looking at. You're looking at Slavyansk to the west next. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a conflict that lasts a long time, unfortunately. And it's unfortunate because war is nasty. War is not something that is good for anybody. You know, this isn't something that needed to happen. I think that's the most enraging part of all of this. This didn't need to happen. And it's happening. And, you know, regardless of, and this is something, you know, I think Mark always points out, regardless of the fact that Russia has the upper hand, there are still Russian lives being lost. There are still dead Ukrainians that didn't want to fight in this conflict. There's still people that are in between that are victims of this entire thing that have no say in this. And I think that's what people forget when it comes to this. And what is really, to me, the issue with so many people in their attempt to be neutral is that they refuse to admit that, you know, there is somebody here that is the aggressor. And if they would stop giving weapons to Ukraine, and if they would stop, you know, funding Ukraine to the tune of billions of dollars, this conflict could end tomorrow, because Ukraine wouldn't be able to sustain this on their own. Not without the help of NATO. They wouldn't. So how do you end this conflict? You do that, but they won't. So you can't equate and say Russia is doing this or that without saying, okay, this funding needs to stop, because this is clearly, you have third parties involved here. This isn't Ukraine fighting Russia. This is NATO fighting Russia, because without NATO, Ukraine wouldn't be able to do it. They wouldn't have weapons. They wouldn't have ammunition. They wouldn't have money. So you can't treat this as something where you say, well, I'm neutral because this is, you know, Russia is fighting. Well, it's like, well, but who is supplying these weapons for this fight to continue? Russia has said they would stop. They would lay down anything if the funding would stop. And that hasn't happened. So,
well, too many Americans are just too quiet about it, fam. That's why we're going out to the Make America Healthy Again rally. This May 27th over here this Saturday. The rally begins at 1 p.m. Pastor Jardula will be there with Gerald Celente, with Dennis Kucinich. Make America Healthy Again, meaning physically, spiritually, and patriotically. I think what it means to be patriotic is to stand up against fake wars, to stand up against the racket, to stand up. You know, if you want to support the troops, support them by bringing them home and not fighting for fascist gains, meaning corporations, to rape other countries' resources or to.
Is that what it means?
Yeah. Well, patriotically, yeah. That's what we define patriotically as, you know what I'm saying? So an empowering event with lineups of renowned experts, fam. I don't know if I'm a renowned expert, but I'm going to go out there and give it my all and have a good time. It's at the Crown Garden, which is the Four Corners of Freedom on Crown and John Street in Kingston, New York. Kingston, New York is about 90 miles north of LaGuardia, 60 miles south of Albany. So if you're out in the New York area, come join Gerald Celente and his group of friends speaking at an anti-war rally. We're going to mainly focus on this particular war that's still going on. And like you said, fam, if one side would just stop right now, stop spending all this money, stop arming this one side, this wouldn't go on. This would stop tomorrow. It could stop tomorrow if we had the political will to fight and get it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it would.